Joe talks about Joe. And now, your host, Joe Slepsky.
Hello, and welcome back to Joe on Joe. It's me, your host, Joe Slepsky. And we're back this week for G.I. Joe number 140. That's right, Real American Hero issue number 140. We are covering in this episode of Joe on Joe Illustrated. Listeners, new and old, thanks for coming back. Or joining us for the first time, I guess, if I'm including the new listeners there. This is the podcast where I go over every issue of the G.I. Joe Real American Hero comic book in excruciating detail. Page by page, panel by panel, with as much in-depth detail as I can muster in an hour. We talk about things that are happening around the time it was released. We talk about other comic books of the time, movies of the time, and our segment You Were Saying. That's it. I mean, that's what we do. We've done all the cartoons. If you want to go back into the archives and find the cartoons, they're all available, whether it's on the website or via our podcast feed. I think the podcast feed is like a 200 episode limit or something. And we are, including the Patreon Joe and Joe Illustrateds, we're well over 300 podcasts, which is a lot of podcasting. So I want to thank each and every one of you for going with me on this journey. It has been a journey, and I appreciate it. We're not done yet. So while you're on there looking back through the archives, I want to thank you for following me at Joe on Joe Pod. That's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Send me an email to joeandjoepod@gmail.com if you have anything to say about the show. Let me know what your thoughts are. Let me know if you loved this issue, if you hated this issue. I'm enjoying this Transformers crossover, and I really enjoyed what happened in this issue that kind of quasi-confirmed that the miniseries G.I. Joe Transformers is in continuity. So that was exciting to hear. And while you're also out there, you're rating and reviewing, you can go to Patreon. You can give me a Patreon follow there. That's where we have all of the Joe and Joe Illustrated episodes. So if you want to help support the cause of Joe on Joe, you can do it for $1, $3, as much as you want. We have a $20 sponsorship level. Speaking of sponsors, we have fabulous sponsors, the Movies and a Meal podcast. Listeners, I know what you need in your life. You need more podcasts. And you also love movies. So why not do a podcast that's about not one movie. It's about not two movies. It's about 3 movies and a meal. I'm talking the Movies and a Meal podcast. This show is great. It's brought to you by Keith, Brad, and Ben. And each week they bring a new movie to the table, which they all discuss as a group. And it's not, your highfalutin movies. It's What We Do in the Shadows, The Fantastic Four, Rise of the Silver Surfer, and Out of Sight. It's Bad Education, Ghost Rider, and A View to a Kill. It's X-Men Last Stand, Queen Sugar, The Mandalorian, and Major League 2. They are a lot of fun to listen to. You guys know Ben. It's our friend Ben Pensarga. He was a guest on Joe and Joe. In fact, Ben was the very first remote guest that I ever had on this podcast, so he's always got a special place in my heart. I'm really digging this. I just started listening to it last week. It is a lot of fun. They bring a guest in. The guest, I listened to their Heathers episode. They were joined by Kelly, and she went in depth on her favorite movie, which was Heathers, and it made me want to go watch Heathers to watch with them. I really dig it. So guys, find them out there at Movies and a Meal, Twitter, Instagram. Their website is moviesandameal.podbean.com. They put out 1 episode a week. Give them a listen, guys. Support them. Let them know Joe on Joe sent you. I don't think you're going to be disappointed. It is quite entertaining. And now back to the show. And while you are checking them out, this is the final opportunity. If you're hearing this the week of launch, so this episode goes live on September 21st. On September 24th, FanConXR is the very first virtual reality comic book and fan convention. That is right, guys. We are participating in a comic book convention entirely in space. I guess not space really, but the internet. And it's going to be fun. And if you go, I'm going to be there. I'm going to be there pretty much all day. That's what, that is my task there. And it's going to be a good time. My avatar is going to probably look pretty much like me. I mean, not quite as handsome. They don't really have icons that really match the, I mean, there's a reason this isn't a YouTube show, guys. There's a reason this is all audio. I'm just kidding. No, but yeah, we're going to be there. So I'm going to be there. So please, please, please go to FanConXR.com. That is where you're going to see all the details for this. The actual event is taking place through a provider called AltSpace VR. They're one of the leaders in virtual reality. I guess XR is the bigger, like the meta reality term for it. I'm a little new to it, but FanConXR.com. It's got all the details there. It's got a link to the actual event where you're going to create your avatar, RSVP that you're going to show up. There's a whole lot of creators and panelists, moderators. A lot of people from the industry are going to be there hanging out in VR, having conversations. It's all literally brand new. No one's ever done this before for a comic book convention, so we're not sure how this is going to roll, but we're excited for it. We've got creators from Heavy Metal, Aftershock Comics, Boom Comics, let me think, Archie Comics. Garth Ennis is going to be there giving a panel. Garth Ennis, that's right, creator of The Boys, creator of Preacher, creator of Hitman, my personal favorite Garth Ennis creation. We've also got the one and only Christopher Priest, who I am a massive fan of Christopher Priest, and especially if you love Marvel during this era of G.I. Joe, then I'm positive you ran across Christopher Priest's influence. He worked on a ton of Spidey books back during this era. He would have been in 93. I want to say he was doing. Did they start? No, his Black Panther came later. Because that was part of Marvel Knights. His Black Panther, by the way, which every bit of Black Panther since is based on. And he might have been doing Quantum and Woody. No, I think Quantum and Woody came later. I'm not sure what Chris Priest was working on, but he teamed up with Mark Bright a lot, and Mark Bright is one of my all-time favorite J. Joe artists. I had the pleasure of meeting Mr. Priest 2-3 years ago at a Long Beach con out here, and it was a genuine. I mean, I've been around the block. I met some cool creators and cool people and whatever. I could not wait to meet Christopher Priest. He wrote the first issue actually, but he did the Green Lantern Origin Emerald Dawn. I love it. He did a ton of stuff with Power Man and Iron Fist. He did a lot of work on that. I think he did. Yeah. Back when he was he actually used to go by the name James Owlsley. So if you've ever recognized that name, that's Chris Priest. He's going to be there. David Pepose, who's currently writing Savage Avengers, will be there. We don't have any G.I. Joe. I'm kind of, I'm like, what's up, guys? So I'll be repping G.I. Joe. I don't know if I can get a G.I. Joe avatar look going. Now, maybe I'll try to get my avatar to kind of, I don't think you can upload images yet. I think we're not there yet. That's the cool thing about this. If you guys ever played old school, like PC games, like back in the day, the text-based adventures, and then eventually they came up with 3D graphics, and then you're fully immersed in a fully realized Grand Theft Auto style world, right? This is that text-based version of it. This is where you're going to say, I was in on the ground floor. I was at one of the very first, or actually this is, as far as we know, the very first virtual fan convention. So check it out. You do not have to have VR. You can absolutely go through your desktop. There's also going to be a Zoom link. If you just wanted to zoom in and listen to the panels, you're more than welcome to do that as well. I urge you to, at minimum, jump on the desktop. I don't have a VR rig, so that's not in my wheelhouse. But I'm going to be there on desktop, and it's really easy. I loaded it up through Steam. You can also just download their use the AltSpace interface as well. I went through Steam, and it was super easy, and it's neat, and it's like a video game, and you're walking around, and we've all been there. We played like Second Life and grew up through that, but it's that. So check it out. FanConXR, Saturday, September 24th. Give it a follow.
You were saying?
I was saying. And now we're going to talk about comic books and movies that were on the shelf and in the theaters the month of G.I. Joe 140, which is cover dated September of 1993. So we'll start over at Marvel. Marvel Comics has this is fun. I've talked about this before. I've mentioned that Darkman has a series running, and this is issue 6, which I believe is the final issue of that series. I just started reading the Darkman. I have these. I picked them up in the last year or so, and I just started reading the Darkman 3-part movie adaptation. It's a lot of fun. It's a little insane because he doesn't really have any, like, his only power is that he can't feel pain, so that he can do Herculean stuff, and he goes crazy on people, which is a wild power, quote unquote power to have. Like, you can just take any kind of damage and murder people. And then he's got the fake. I feel like the fake skin should have been a part of his power set, but he has the fake skin. He makes the masks, and then the mask dissolves. That should have just been a part of his power set. Figure it out, Sam Raimi. Here I am telling the great Sam Raimi how to roll. But I am reading Darkman, so I'm actually gonna hit this miniseries, which is the second one. Darkman number 6 is on stands this month. I'm gonna hit that miniseries next, so maybe I'll have that finished up by next week. Daredevil 320, which is the first chapter of that Fall from Grace we talked about, and it's got Silver Sable as a crossover. She's holding a tattered Daredevil. This is cool because last week we had Daredevil tease in the She-Hulk episode. They teased his helmet, and it's a yellow helmet. If you're following anything on social media, you know that that's where they're going with this. They're kind of, it sounds like they're doing a soft reboot where we're same actors because we like them, but they're kind of restarting them in the Marvel universe, which is neat. What else? A lot of angst on a lot of covers. There's a lot of hatching. This era is really good for hatching. So I'm seeing a lot of that. A lot of really muscular dudes with a lot of muscle striations running from things. There's elegance is missing. That's the exact word. I've been talked about this for the last few months. My feeling on this, and I feel like I haven't put a fine point on it. And that's it. That's my final word. There is no elegance on the covers of these comic books to paint with a super broad brush. Every once in a while, you hit a wonderfully elegant cover. Don't get me wrong. But there's not a lot of elegance on these covers. There's a lot of straining and grunting and striations and things like that. And I think that's a good way to kind of summarize this era of marketing comic books. They weren't very elegant. They were very in your face. Lots of emphasis on the form and how well defined we could draw the form. And that's it, versus the putting a emphasis on framing framing a picture. You know what I mean? Framing an elegant look, like framing a scene. That's the word. Ta-da! It's not terribly difficult. Framing a scene. Here's a cool book, Magneto Zero. This was a big deal, man. This was it was Magneto's first book. So they say first actual Magneto titled comic book that he ever had. Although he obviously showed up in a ton of X-Men, and also was a major player in Supervillain Team Up. This is the first book with his name on the cover. And for a long time, this book was, and when I say long time, I mean back in the 90s, this book was hot. Like, it was a hot book. Like, it was hard to get. And then people realized they must have printed 1 million copies of it because the price just dropped forever. But for a long time, Magneto Zero was considered a hot book. Morbius Revisited. They're on issue number 2. I hope everyone's enjoyed their Morbin time. And what's Spider-Man doing? Spider-Man. Oh, he was finishing up. He just finished up the Carnage, Absolute Carnage crossover. That's right. So now he's getting on with business. There's some Infinity Crusade crossovers happening. That's what's happening in the Warlock, Infinity Watch, and the Warlock Chronicles. What the has a Spider-Man 2099 riff. It's What the number 6. I love the What the comics. I got tired of them back in the day, and I stopped collecting them. And then maybe 10 years ago, I realized, I was like, man, I need to finish my What the collection. And some of these later What the's, I got to be honest, are hard to get, or at least they're hard to find in the wild. Let's put it that way. So they may be absolutely easy to pick up, on eBay or whatever, but they're a little hard to find in the wild. So I don't believe I have this one. This does not look familiar at all, but I've got a solid run of like 20 or 24 or 25 or so what ifs. What does. And I absolutely enjoy them for sure. X-Men 24, this is considered a classic cover with Rogue and Gambit about to kiss. That's kind of, I think this has taken off, not a ton in the back issue market, but this cover alone, because it's Gambit embracing Rogue, and people love that partnership, which I do too. I think it's pretty great. So that's it. That's kind of it for Marvel. This is kind of a quiet month for Marvel.
You were saying?
Over at DC Comics, we're still dealing with the ramifications of Superman's the depth and death of Superman. And here we go in Action 691 and Adventures 504. The Man of Steel is back, and he is in his black suit. And I believe he actually returned in Man of Steel number 25, which is also this month. And then it might have rolled in, and then I forget what order. I can't see the triangles. And also Superman 81. So this is when he emerged from his Kryptonian healing tanks, and he has the mullet now. He looks fabulous in that mullet. And he shows up and he goes to Coast City to help. He's helping Steel and Superboy against the cyborg Superman. And you think against the Eradicator, and then the Eradicator decides to sacrifice itself to help the last surviving Kryptonian, which is Superman. So it ends up being kind of all of those guys against the cyborg. Spoiler alert for the Batman. This is the biggest comic book of the month by far. I did not get it at the time. I wish I had, because I got Legends of the Dark Knight 50, which is on the stands the same month. But I overlooked Batman Adventures number 12, which is the first appearance of Harleen Quinzel from the Batman animated series. This is Harley's first appearance in the DC, in comic books, really. Not technically the DC universe. That would be in that Alex Ross covered Harley Quinn special shot, which comes in a year or so. But this is Harley's first appearance in comic books. It's got Batgirl on the cover. Poison Ivy is pointing an arrow thing at her. And there's Harley pointing a gun at Batgirl. So that's Harley's first appearance. It's an expensive book. It's gone up and up and up and up over the years. It certainly peaked when she made her Suicide Squad stuff for sure, and then it settled back down. But I think it is a strong book to have in your collection if you're thinking about some key books to make sure you have. This is always going to be one of them. That Alex Ross one as well, although not as much. People think that's the one, but this is really it. I mean, collectors know this is it, but a lot of people think that because that's such an iconic cover. I'm talking about the one with the Alex Ross where it's Joker and her painted on the cover, and it's got an all black cover. It seems like that would be the big key one, but it's really this quiet little Batman animated adaptation, which is it's a really good story. So yeah, check that out. Also, if you're a Harley Quinn fan, make sure you read Mad Love. If you've never read Mad Love, you need to read Mad Love. Flash 80 with an Alan Davis cover. This was a chromium cover. It's a good looking. I love Alan Davis artwork, and I love Alan Davis Flash covers, and this is a good looking one for sure. Justice League America 80. Booster Gold had gotten jacked up by Doomsday, all right, in the Death of Superman stuff, and his suit, remember, Booster's from the future, so he has like that future suit. It had gotten destroyed and he couldn't repair it. So this is them giving him the idea is that it's supposed to be based, I believe it was based on like a Rocket Red suit. So it was a little bulky and kind of more of a real bulky Iron Man suit. And this is one of those ideas where I totally get what they were going for, but man, did I not enjoy ever seeing him in this outfit. And that was the point though. So I'm not knocking him for that. But man, was this Booster Gold Iron Man-esque suit rough to deal with. And it stuck around for a little while. Ooh, does it not look good. But that's the idea, is that it's supposed to be bulkier than it should be because he doesn't know how to fix things. What else? Lobo Un-American Gladiators, issue number 1. Or actually, I'm sorry, issue number 4. I like Lobo. I like him in small pieces. when they did a Lobo series, that was too much for me, and I dropped out of the Lobo game. I like him as a straw that stirs the drink. I absolutely do. So I'm not here to deny my Lobo love. I'm here for him. I'm here to represent him, and that's it for DC.
You were saying?
Now, in the movie theater, I'm gonna blanket this and say, not a great July of 1993. Now, I say that, and then we're gonna go through some movies that you're gonna go, oh, those are great, but I guess it was a different time. My expectation for what's great, because remember the previous month you had Jurassic Park, right? So that's just this giant shadow that's looming over this. July 2nd, you get Tom Cruise's The Firm. Good movie, don't get me wrong. I think it holds up in some ways, it doesn't in others. Probably one of the better the lawyer writer guys, you know what I'm talking about. Probably one of his better adaptations, but it's not exactly a Jurassic Park level summer blockbuster, right? It's a good adult thriller. Then you get Son-in-Law, Pauly Shore and Carla Gugino. Don't come out of the woodwork, Son-in-Law stands. I've seen it. It's fine. I mean, it's got Lane Smith, who's great. Don't get me wrong, but it's Son-in-Law. And then you go to July 9th and you get In the Line of Fire, which is also great, but that's one of those doesn't hold up that super well in the long term. Like, I've tried to watch it recently and I go, man, I loved this movie back then. Really loved it. And then I watch it now and I go, I don't know, it seems a little flimsy. But not necessarily for like summer kid fare, right? It's not exactly Terminator 3 or Terminator 2 or whatever, lighten up in July. Although you got a rendezvous with my, butt MFer is a great line. And you've also got Rookie of the Year, which I know a lot of people have a lot of love for and a lot of warm feelings about. It's not great. Although Thomas Ian Nicholas did pop in a Golden Apple once. He was a very nice guy. And we were joking, which I'm sure was the 500th time he heard the joke, but we joked about how his arm was doing. And he chuckled, and we had a good laugh. And it's funny because I think he's also in the American Pie movies, which we just overlooked because I'm not a massive fan of those. But I was like, yeah, Rookie of the Year, I get you. Then you go to Weekend at Bernie's 2, which is, it's Weekend at Bernie's 2, right? July 16th, massive movie, Free Willy, but it's Free Willy, it was a cultural phenomenon, but it's Free Willy. And you also get Hocus Pocus, and I don't want to hear about how Hocus Pocus is good. I know they're finally doing a sequel to it. There's a meme going around right now saying, congratulations, we're celebrating our 29th year of pretending Hocus Pocus was a good movie. And that's the truth. This is not a good movie. Hocus Pocus and Hook sit in that pantheon. There's a couple other ones if I put my brain to it. They sit in that pantheon of movies that just are not good movies. But people of that era, kids like Pablo, if you're listening, I'm talking about you, love those movies. Not good. July 23rd, another Stakeout, sequel to Stakeout. Stakeout was a great movie. Really kind of pretty good movie. Another Stakeout, not a good movie. Also, Coneheads. Not a good movie. Poetic Justice, kind of a cool movie. Not a great movie, but kind of a cool movie. It does have Tupac and Janet. It's got some people in it. But it's not, I think it stands better because it had Tupac. I don't think if Tupac wasn't in it, I don't think people would be talking about Poetic Justice the way they kind of do, because it's not like New Jack City, where people look at it now and go, oh, that was kind of ahead of its time. It was really great. It was this and that. Poetic Justice is like, oh, okay. But it's got Tupac, 28th, Robin Hood Men in Tights. Again, I love Mel Brooks. Don't at me. That movie's terrible. Movie's not funny. It's got a few moments, certainly, but that movie's really rough. That's a difficult movie. And then on the 30th, Rising Sun, Sean Connery, Wesley Snipes, which I don't think I've ever been able to sit through that movie. And Sorry Married an Axe Murder, which is totally a cult great movie. I enjoy Sorry Married an Axe Murder, total cult movie. July 30th kind of movie, Not for me. And then Tom and Jerry the movie. So I'd really just read through pretty much everything that came out in July. July 93 was kind of rough. Throwing that out there. It saved the very first week of August. So next week, tune in to find out what movie just makes you completely forget about July. And maybe, honestly, maybe that's all counter-programming to Jurassic Park. And I bet you it was. Probably the studios knew what Jurassic Park was going to do. And I genuinely mean this. They probably said, okay, we better not even try to compete with that same kind of teen audience. We better just go for the adults, which is The Firm. We just went through it all. All those Stakeout, Line of Fire, like that's all skewing adults. And then you're also skewing Dumb and Young. I don't think they were competing for that teen dollar because that was all Jurassic Park. So that's honestly probably what was happening then. And just wait till next week to find out.
Now, mass is ready.
That's right, Destro. So now we're going to G.I. Joe 140, starring Snake Eyes. I'm never not gonna laugh. I don't have my pile of comics in front of me. I want to peek ahead and find out when they stop with this Snake Eye stuff. And Transformers. And again, as far as like logo, too much trade dress on the logos. Now, inside the Transformers box, we've also got it says Robots in Disguise Generation 2. Last time I believe it just said Generation 2. And I'm looking at last issue. It didn't have the Robots in Disguise. So now they're also adding in completely like 5-point, 6-point font Robots in Disguise because we needed more logos on the front of this cover. However, throwing it out there, it's a good looking cover. I believe it's Batista. Yeah, Chris Batista and Hudson. Not sure who's Hudson. Who is Hudson? Hold on. We're talking Don Hudson. And he did a lot of stuff. He did a lot of Captain America's at the time. A lot of stuff I've read. Alpha Flights, issue Transformers here. He did a whole bunch of Captain. He did a run of Cap. Looks like from about 358 all the way through 376 or so. So he was the regular inker on that. He did a bunch of Marvel Comics Presents stuff, some Wolverine, some Amazing Spider-Mans, NFL Super Pro number 10. So cool. Don Hudson, I like his stuff. I've read a lot of his stuff, and I think it looked good. So Don Hudson inked on Chris Batista here, and it's a strong Cobra Commander, a strong windswept Cobra Commander, pointing towards the reader, but like kind of over the reader's right shoulder, with Megatron kind of flying overhead. Some speed lines indicating action, like from a vanishing point. It's a cool cover. I think it's a strong, striking cover. This is the kind of cover where I actually wish Megatron was in his OG outfit, like so it's a little more recognizable than the green tank. Not saying I don't like the green tank, but you get like a classic Cobra Commander in his hood, which is a good looking Cobra Commander. And then if you have, swap that with a traditional Megatron overhead. That could be one for the books. As it is, yes, his head is pretty similar to the original head, but otherwise you go, oh, it's which Transformer is that? And then you have to take a second to go, oh, it's G2 Megatron. You know what I mean? But yeah, I like it. It's, it works. They're not playing around with any overlaps on the logos, which is cool. That works for me. That's fine. And I think it pops. I think it really pops. If you look close, smart work of doing the giving the invisible outline over Cobra Commander. Anywhere he cuts over onto Megatron, the ink stops. So there's this invisible ink barrier. So if you look closely, that it makes the forefront character pop, and it certainly works in this case. Little visual trick for all you young artists out there.
Yo, Joe!
Now, somewhere over Canada. So that means that the Transformers crashed in Canada? I don't know. I don't think I knew that. But maybe they did. Maybe at the start of G2 they started out in Canada. But they're flying over Canada, and the Megatron points out the Ark, the big, that's the ship that the Transformers came in, and he's pointing down to it. And it's Cobra Commander and Zorana and that Dr. Biggles Jones, which is a mouthful. You really need a code name. They're flying in those giant Cobra transport helicopters.
Yo, Joe!
Now, before we leave that, there's two ways to do this. It's a splash page, and it's really zoomed up on. You see Commander in the cockpit. You see Zorana. You see Biggles Jones, and you see the scale of Megatron flying alongside these giant helicopters, right? But this is a close up, but it's a splash page. You could have gone more with the camera pulled back to show us Canada, to show us, that they're flying over Canada like that. But by zooming in like this and having Megatron take up half this page, and then even closer having the zoom in, so that we can actually see Cobra Commander instead of just getting it through a word balloon or something, I think this is a nice job of giving scale to the event. So it doesn't necessarily give us place, which is usually what I look for in a nice splash page. But I think this gives us scale, which in a story like this about a giant robot hanging out with a bunch of humans, I think this is actually a really key factor of choosing this for the splash page. I think it really works. So now we're back onto the next page, and this is a double page splash. It's called Going South. Going 'south. Larry Hama script, Chris Batista pencils, Chip Wallace inks, Bob Sharon coloring, Dave Wohl editor, Tom DeFalco editor-in-chief. And now we get a nice view of the Canadian countryside. Could give us some placement. There are so many deer. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 deer running away. And 1, 2, 3, at least 3 rabbits and a fox. So this is like straight up a Disney cartoon getting disturbed by the ark. The ark itself is lifting out of you presume it was covered with snow. And actually, if you look closely on the top of it, just to get another sense of scale, there are trees that are growing on top of the ark. So this is a massive ship, and it is lifting out of the Canadian countryside. And yeah, that's it. I mean, we were talking scale in the previous issue, right? So we saw how big Megatron was to Cobra Commander. This then gives you scale of how large the ship is to Megatron. So Megatron actually is smaller than this, massive ship. So these 3 pages are all about scale.
Yo, Joe!
So now, we're on the 4th page here. And Dr. Biggles Jones is in love with the technology here. She says they have a magnetic drive, they have plasma impellers, they have proton accelerators, and she's drooling over it. One of the Techno Vipers says all that mass is being lifted without any heat or air displacement. She realizes that they've developed, it's really anti-gravity, which is how you're explaining how the Transformers fly. And then the Viper just says, or something like that, which is probably the best line in the whole book, because it gives you the carte blanche of just being able to enjoy it without questioning how Megatron is just flying with no propulsion or something like that. It's comic book science. Let's not look too further into it. We're going to have fun. It's really, really important, which is, something I need to remember more on this show. So I get it. Sometimes I get into the minutia here. But they're also transporting Scarlet, who's been stabbed. So I don't know why. See, this is the part I don't get. I guess she's staying with him, even though she was stabbed in a medical helicopter, but they're also transporting Dr. Mindbender. So, Dr. Mindbender in the cloning vat. So we get a little story reminder that that's happening.
Yo, Joe!
So now halfway around the world, if you hear that sigh in my voice, it was genuinely felt. We revisit on Destro and the Baroness. They were flying some gliders, and they're retaking Castle Destro, the transforming snake castle, right? You remember last issue, they flew all the way to Cobra Island. They met Zartan there. So now they're flying in with Zartan. You also see him on one of these paragliders. And they're flying back to retake this castle. the sigh for me is I don't care. I don't care about this castle anymore. Like, I don't like it. It really, we're really beating a dead horse with dealing with this castle and Destro taking it, not taking it, living in there. Like, I haven't been this concerned about where a Scottish guy lives since I saw Braveheart.
Yo, Joe!
So Techno Viper's inside the castle. Like, there's alarms. They land with the gliders, I'm assuming silently. Although one of them sets, well, it looks like it's Destro's, but it's, to be frank, because he's the only one they show landing, and then they show a pair of boots. So it seems weird that Destro would be the one to set off the alarms. But the Vipers are, set off the intruders there. Although that could be part of Destro's plan, quite frankly, because
Yo, Joe!
there stands Cobra Commander. As these Vipers run up and they go, "Hey man, who's the intruder?" There is hooded Cobra Commander in his glory, and he's calling him. You call that an acceptable reaction time? You lethargic jackanapes. Well, I have to do a lot better than that if you want to keep collecting your stock options. What? It's Cobra Commander, but it can't be. He's in Canada. And he says, "I came back for a surprise visit. Stack your weapons." Yeah, there's going to be disciplinary action. So they drop their weapons, and that's when Destro makes his move. So then Destro and the Baroness come out from behind the Cobra throne, so to speak, and Zartan changes shape, and so now they're holding the Vipers at gunpoint.
Yo, Joe!
So it just puts Destro back at the castle. I don't know. I know there's only 15 issues left. I don't want to spend it all dealing with who owns a castle that I don't care about. You know what I mean? You hear where I'm coming? I get it. It's a 30-year-old comic book. But that's the weariness you're hearing in my voice. Meanwhile, this Transformers stuff, exciting. It's new. It's fresh. I really kind of dig it. What are they doing? So the arc is up and moving. Megatron is leading the charge, and they're bringing it to North America, and they go to Millville. You guys remember Millville, a nice place to live, Cobra town that Cobra took over. Megatron makes a kind of he has the reader response to it. He says, the streets are empty. Like, is it possible that there's a whole town in the middle of the United States that is deserted? So he's asking the question that readers are asking. I genuinely don't feel Megatron would care. Like, he would be like, you're telling me to go here. Okay, we'll go here. I don't, I trust that you're not going to leave. It's in your best interest to get the arc. So I'm assuming it's going to go well, I guess is where I'm coming from.
Yo, Joe!
But it gives us an excuse for exposition. And Biggles Jones says, even if this is a ghost town, isn't it dangerous to land an entire Cobra task force out in the open like this? And that's when Cobra Commander reminds us and everybody that it's no ordinary town, nor is it deserted. All the citizenry of Millville come out. They're all brainwashed. They file up. They're brainwashed zombies. Obedient Vegetables by Dr. Mindbender's brainwave scanner. It's not really his, though, right? It was Dr. Venom's. Yeah, come on. Credit where credit's due. And Cobra Commander's reveling in it.
Yo, Joe!
So we see they're transporting Mindbender's. He's in think a Bacta tank from The Empire Strikes Back. That's what Mindbender's in. If you're not reading along with us, that's really what he's been. He's been in this liquid-filled tube the whole time. They've never drawn actual anything on his face to why he doesn't drown in this tube, in this Bacta tube. Even Luke had a mask over his face when he was in it. So I don't know why this clone of Mindbender's not drowning, but he's not. And they're also pulling Scarlet out as well. And this part gets a little crazy. So they're talking about the town, and Cobra Commander says, these people have been liberated from their irrational animal behavior patterns. There's no crime here, no stress, no rap music. That feels like an assault. Feels like an attack on rap music, Cobra Commander. But one of the guys, looks like the local butcher, kind of escapes. And he starts screaming for the police. A couple of Vipers roll over here and they grab him, but this guy is flipping out. I remember what you did. They throw a portable scanner headgear on him.
Yo, Joe!
He overpowers them, and he knocks them into the Vipers that were carrying Mindbender, the Mindbender clone, and his Bacta tube, which promptly drops and hits the ground. And he then throws down the headgear that had its own, battery source for the brainwave scanner. When he does, there's sparks from that hits the liquid that this buck naked Dr. Mindbender was floating in, electrocuting, kind of bringing him to life, so to speak. This well-coiffed, well-naked Dr. Mindbender.
Yo, Joe!
And now that guy's screaming is quickly silenced by Road Pig. He shows up, cracks him on the head. It's a good looking. I like Batista's pencils in this. I do. I really like it. He's got a really clean line. I think he does good form work. He does really good facial acting too, which is great. And I think that's what was missing for a while, where everybody's not giving the same kind of emotion all the time. That you've got different emotions from different people. Prime example here. Look at the way that Zorana and Biggles Jones are standing. They look like different women, and they look like Zorana looks a little perturbed, and Biggles Jones looks fascinated by what's happening. Like there's different emotions on their faces, which is great. And then we get this reminiscent of Serpentor, and also really reminiscent of the Terminator, Dr. Mindbender rising from the steam of that stuff. He says, "You did this to me. You can hardly," Commander says, "Mindbender, he's alive." And he says, "You can hardly call it that." He says, you should try it sometime. It's an altogether unique experience." And he looks like the naked Terminator when you came back in time in T2. And I believe it's also mirroring a little bit of the Serpentor from memory serves. I don't have that in front of me, but it feels like this is a callback to when Serpentor first emerged from his liquid sarcophagus.
Yo, Joe!
Cobra Commander confirms he had him brought to life, and over his shoulder is the star of Silent in the Zoo, Freedom, flying overhead. We just got a bald eagle popping in for what's going to happen in the next few pages. So Freedom shows up, and Cobra. It's just the revival of Dr. Mindbender. So he's getting his bearings. He's not trying to figure out what's going on. And he recognizes a Decepticon right away, which means they've had previous interactions with him. So that's very much call back to the miniseries. And he's very intrigued as to what's going on. So he's going to set aside his anger at being murdered to see where this new interesting situation develops.
Yo, Joe!
So now we follow Silent in the Zoo star Freedom as he flies back home, or back across like the fields of Millville, and he lands on Spirit's arm, and there's Spirit calling him back. And Spirit says, "What news do you bring me, brother of the wind?" I love Spirit. I really do. I thought they did a good job with this classified figure.
Yo, Joe!
And we've got is that I think that's Mutt. I think it's supposed to be Mutt. They don't yeah, it's Mutt. Yeah, there it is. Yeah, sorry. So we've got Mutt leaning up against a tree. And it's funny because Spirit says, like they're here, meaning Cobra, and he says, "I don't suppose he gave you a head count, he being Freedom." Spirit replies with a funny, "No, should I ask?" And Mutt replies, "You're kidding, right? No, don't answer that. It would mess up my head." But Mutt's got that kind of relationship with Junkyard, right? So, all Junkyard, by the way, star of G.I. Columbo. So I think that's pretty funny that of all the people to kind of be like, "Yeah, sure, you talk to your bird," it's Mutt. Because, dude, you totally talk to your dog. Don't lie. Come on. So they call, and it's Dial Tone, Flint. Who is that? General Hawk. Not sure who's behind the wheel there. But they're all waiting closer, elsewhere near Millville. Roadblock's here. He's in another team with Tunnel Rat and Rock and Roll. And it looks like sci-fi. Is that sci-fi? It's either, oh no, I think it's airtight. Yeah. Yeah, it's airtight. And so they're going to enter Millville through the tunnels. How they got set up on Millville so quick, they do mention that. They say they got a hot tip that Cobra was moving a task force, so they kind of guessed that it was Millville. I like that Larry kind of thought ahead for that.
Yo, Joe!
So then, of course, because we can't let the ninjas go unused, Hawk has dial tone call the Ninja Force. And it really should be Storm Shadow in the Ninja Force, because I feel like Storm Shadow is getting as much play as Snake Eyes here. But they are infiltrating Millville themselves in a van, in an Arbco van. Yojo Cola on the side, being driven by Chuckles, our boy Chuckles. Ninja Force has deployed. And it's Storm Shadow, Snake Eyes, Shebang, Nunchuck, Dojo, and Jinx. They're all clear. They're heading into Millville to check this out. Of course, Snake Eyes is very interested to find out what's going on with Scarlet. He's a man on a mission. I like this. I like this drawing. I like this is a fun Storm Shadow popping off the page a little bit. Again, I still am not a huge fan of that version of Snake Eyes, but this is a fun rendition of Storm Shadow. I think it works well.
Yo, Joe!
Back in the tunnels, and also let me also applaud here. Back to a G.I. Joe mission. I feel like we haven't had like a mission like this in quite a while. So now we're in the tunnels with Airtight and Rock and Roadblock and Tunnel Rat. They're making their way into Millville. It's just there's a lot of setup that's happening here. The ninjas are riding in on a truck silently through the night sky. Some good animation by Batista to kind of set the stage of where we're at. I like this. Here's another version of the Arbco. It's ARB company, so it's not, instead of Arbco, it's just ARB. That's a good way to phrase it.
Yo, Joe!
Any iteration on the Cobra always makes me smile. Arbco, Broca, Barco, all that stuff. So Arb company, I think, works really well. So the ninjas are running over the rooftop, and we get why is Snake Eyes in such a hurry, and we get the reminder that that Scarlet's at the hospital, and that's what they're going to check on. So the ninjas start rappelling outside of the hospital, and Storm Shadow spots her in her room. And Dr. Biggles Jones is there. She says, "Everyone leave. I need to speak to Scarlet in private." What's going to happen? Because does she trust her? We don't know.
Yo, Joe!
The other ninjas, Shebang and Nunchuck and what have you, they're peeping Tom. They're peeping Tom on Dr. Mindbender. He's laying in a bathtub full of ice, as he says, having to pack myself in ice until his metabolism stabilizes. Very reminiscent of the movie Universal Soldier. And I think they did this a little bit with Serpentor, if memory serves. But absolutely a plot point from the movie Universal Soldier. I do recall that distinctly. That Jean-Claude Van Damme had to get into ice, otherwise he was going to overheat, which is a neat. It's a neat gag. It's a neat gag until you kind of play it out. Then you go, oh, he would just be overheating all the time. How is that? That's not, like then it becomes a crutch. But it is a neat gag to use at least. And I like the way Larry phrases it here. To be frank, he says until my metabolism stabilizes. So it's not a constant thing. If I recall in Universal Soldier, it was like an always thing for them. They always had to be put back into the freeze. There was no stabilization that was going to happen. So I like that Larry thought ahead to put that, so we don't always have to see Dr. Mindbender in the nude in a tub full of ice, even though that may be something that we want to see. I'm just throwing that out there. And he's a good-looking man, just saying. So he has big plans, though, and that's what we're learning here, is that he's happy to be alive, and he's going to be an active participant in villainy. So Biggles Jones needs to talk to Scarlet. She says, I know that you're a double agent and that you're still loyal to G.I. Joe. And with that, Snake Eyes starts to draw his sword because he needs to see what's going to happen next.
Yo, Joe!
Do I think Snake Eyes would cut her down if he saw her like make a bad move towards Scarlet? Absolutely. And that's what he's waiting on. That's what we're waiting on too. We're going to have to wait till the next issue to find out the results of that. Meanwhile, the Tunnel Rat crew, They see Megatron in the middle of the town. Cobra Commander convinces him to turn into a tank because they can't stop commercial airlines. They can't stop, traffic helicopters, things like that. So if they saw a giant robot running around, that'd be harder to explain than just a military tank here or there. So he transforms into a tank, and that confirms the Tunnel Rat. We got a Transformer on our hands.
Yo, Joe!
And if you remember last issue, we talked about the transformations. That transformation, that kind of fade out, blurry transformation that Batista drew on that page, matches that second transformation from the previous page, which does not match the original transformation from the first few pages of the last issue. Therefore, I'm fairly positive those first few pages were drawn by someone else and uncredited. Probably Andrew Wildman, but uncredited. So now Hawk is hearing back from Tunnel Rat, and he says, he calls into Mainframe, and he says, we have visual confirmation from Tunnel Rat. You have the coordinates, do your thing. And there's an amplifier device, and there's a diagram that, and I think he's talking to G.I. Jane. I think that's supposed to be G.I. Jane, to be honest. So he says, how soon will you be ready with your transmission? Oh, no, it's Professor Mott. I take that back. I don't know who Professor Mott is, but I thought it was G.I. Jane for a second. That would have been exciting. But Mainframe is asking, how soon can you transmit this, Professor Mott? And she says, we can be beaming your message to that sector of the galaxy within 10 minutes. Galaxy, which is funny. So in 10 minutes, we can wait a year and a half for that message to transmit. I'm just kidding.
Yo, Joe!
Oh man, earlier there was, I forget, there was something in here. Someone mentioned a transmitter that they had left over from the, here it is. I'm sorry. It's right here. Yeah. And 10 minutes later on Cybertron, and it's the transdimensional warp communicator that was entrusted to the G.I. Joe team has been activated. That's Bumblebee. Megatron is back, and he's on Earth. Alert all Autobots, Bumblebee. It seems that our work is unfinished. The alert is online, Optimus Prime. So next issue, Sucker Punch. So yeah, so they left them with an alert beacon when they at the last time that puts G.I. Joe versus Transformers into canon. The miniseries that we really never referenced. I don't think I even reviewed it for this show. I think I teased it and never really went back to do it. Maybe I have to do it. Oh, god damn it. Sorry. Ooh, pardon my French. Gosh darn it. Yeah. Maybe we got to do that now. Anyway, that's exciting, guys. I liked it. It is absolutely one of those filler issues. It gets you from A to B and not to C. I don't care about the castle. If we never see that castle again, I'd be happy. I love the Megatron stuff. Seeing the Joe team on a mission in action again, that's cool. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to like in this issue. I think the art's on point. I think that's back to that more grounded style that I enjoy with G.I. Joe. And I hope you guys did too. So that's it for this week. Remember to go check out FanConXR this Saturday, September 24th. And now you Joe and Joeing is half the battle.